So, in a previous video, I mentioned that I wasn't allowed to touch like tarot cards when I was younger because I grew up in a Christian background. And everything back then was evil and demonic, so, that was a bad thing and it was just a no no. And I was one of those kids who had to tell the teacher that she couldn't, like, I couldn't be in the room if she was reading Harry Potter to the class because of my Christian background. And it was so bad that one time I remember walking into Walmart and this lady was just like, "We got Harry Potter stickers," and holds it out to me, and I backed away. And everybody freaking laughed because they're like, "Oh, they backed, like, she backed away from it like it would actually physically hurt her." And it's just like, that's what I was taught. I literally, as a kid, backed away from a sticker in fear because that's what I was taught, that Harry Potter was evil. And it's funny because I did question it. And there's a certain amount of like levels that you can just go through questioning before you just start getting disciplined or ignored. And basically the rumor ugh, is so fucking dumb. The rumor about the Harry Potter thing was that there was a witch who came and said that the spells in the Harry Potter book were real spells. And I remember deep down wanting to actually see them and try it. Because like I've been obsessed with like occult stuff as a kid. Like I always loved monsters. I loved watching Scooby Doo. I liked the cartoons where they had episodes of like those fortune teller machines because I would actually look at the cards in those episodes and I would always want to know what they meant. But, it was evil, so we weren't allowed to do that. But I was still allowed to watch Halloween Town though. And I watched the absolute hell out of that movie. And Hocus Pocus. And yeah, because witches were supposed to be evil, and there was no such thing as a good witch, which is funny because I actually had a friend in middle school who was just like, she's like, "What if they're a good witch?" And my automatic response because of the brainwashing was just like, "Oh, yeah, we don't believe that there are good witches." Even though, like, deep down in my own heart, I was just like, but, like, freaking Wizard of Oz, though. And, like, I wished with everything in me that there was, like, a such thing as a good witch and that I could just use magic whenever I wanted and stuff like that. But it was really bad. Like, it was so fear inspiring. And to think back to like how deeply I lived in fear and it was praised and I absolutely hated it. But my question was always like, okay, but like I came to that conclusion where I was just like, so if a witch comes and says that, you know, Harry Potter has real spells in it, like if the goal is to be evil and to corrupt the masses, why would she tell people that they're real spells instead of keeping it silent so that everybody could trip and fall their way into some nefarious shit? And the logic behind that was, oh, well, God has a way of using even the enemy to, tell you the truth about certain things. And it's just like, okay, so God can literally force some random witch to come out and say, hey, by the way, these spells are real, and it just be the warning bell for all of Christian society, just be like, no, we're not getting into that. But couldn't stop people from hurting people anyway. Like, that don't make no damn sense. And like, I questioned it further, but people would just constantly get exasperated with me. And I remember one time, like, it happened so many times, but one time in particular, like, it was a whole new church, because we moved a lot, so there's always a new church. They always had different standards, or whatever the case is. Some of them were stricter than others, and some of them drove me absolutely insane. I hated all of them, and we weren't allowed to fall asleep, especially after you reached a certain age. Once you were a certain age, you had to stay awake. Yet, when I would say, none of this shit makes sense to me, not like that, obviously, but when I would say, hey, I don't understand anything that they're saying, it was like they were speaking a completely different language sometimes. And sometimes they were. But they're like, oh, well, that just means that the message wasn't for you today. And I'm like, okay, but why do I have to be here if it's not for me? So I'm just supposed to be here every day in case it's for me, and I have to spend hours in here starving, exhausted, all prim and proper for a message that's not for me. That doesn't make any sense, but you get shut up because you're just a kid and you don't understand, because you're not supposed to have a logically processing brain, especially at the age that I was at. But I was just like, at one of the churches, I literally asked, I was like, so a lot of different religions think that their religion is the right one. How do we know that ours is the right one? How do you know that everybody else is like anybody else's besides this one? And I was hoping and praying to everything that I could fucking think of in my head, that I would find out that this was wrong. This was the wrong one. And so the person, she was like, oh, that's a good question. And she's like, I'll get back to you on that. And it takes her a while. But she prints me out this packet. Now, mind you, this was before I really got into reading. And I'm just like, I never read that packet. I'll be honest, I never read that packet. Like, now, I would probably read it so I could just debunk everything that it said. But I never read it. Basically, it was some kind of something explaining why it was the right one. But I'm just like, if you can't just straight up tell me from your own mouth, and you have to use someone else's words to tell me, then this feels wrong to me. If you can't tell me why this is the right religion out of everybody else's, because there were so many other options, so many other more interesting options, especially like from my perspective, that you couldn't just say it. You had to print out a packet for a kid to tell them why it was right. Like, I get backing it with your evidence or whatever, but to me, if it wasn't a simple answer on why it's supposed to be right versus everything else, it didn't make fucking sense. I was living in too much damn fear and stressed about every damn thing that I was just like, I'm not fucking reading that. I absolutely hate this religion, and I would I guess we'll get into part 2 on that. Part 2 of part 3, I guess. Yeah. But moving on.